From FingerLakes1.com, this is Inside the FLX. I'm Josh Durso, and if you call this region home, you've probably noticed a lot of environmental headlines recently. If you felt like there have been more of them or more environmental issues making headlines, you wouldn't be wrong because there have been. And that's actually due to some community organizers and activists who have played a big role in advocating for greater protection, funding, and much more on these issues. I'd like to welcome two organizers who have had a huge impact regionally to the show, Joseph Campbell and Yvonne Taylor, President and Vice President of Gas Free Seneca and Seneca Lake Guardian, a Waterkeeper affiliate. Thank you both for being here.
Well, thanks for having us back, Josh.
Yes, thank you, Josh.
Yeah, so that's right. You guys were here before. Just to sort of kick things off, tell us a little bit about yourselves and how you got involved with some of these environmental issues. And, of course, what is Gas Free Seneca and Seneca Lake Guardian?
Well, we started Gas Free Seneca almost 7 years ago now. It'll be 7 years in January, this coming January, and in response to the proposal to store liquefied petroleum gas in these 60, 70-year-old unlined, abandoned salt caverns on the southwestern shore of Seneca Lake, just a couple miles north of Watkins Glen. And we've been fighting that ever since. Seneca Lake Guardian, we're an affiliate with the Waterkeeper Alliance, and they actually approached us over 2 years ago because of the advocacy we'd already been doing for Seneca Lake. They wanted to have some foothold into the Finger Lakes region, because the Finger Lakes region is huge, and we know there's 11 named lakes considered Finger Lakes, and many smaller bodies of water, and they're all constantly under threat by one thing or another, industrial gas storage. And now this incinerator proposal came out of nowhere, and it's just, to me, it's insane. I mean,
it defies logic. We were talking about that before we came on, and it's like it defies logic. You couldn't you couldn't have written this. It's like fiction.
It does seem
that's
that
right.
way.
That's right. This is just another absurd proposal that threatens the Finger Lakes region. As a reason, we consider these projects as regional too. I mean, they're not just threatening Seneca Lake, and in this case, the incinerator's almost midway between the two largest of the Finger Lakes, Seneca and Cayuga.
Mm-hmm. So, Yvonne, let's jump over to you. And what is Seneca Lake Guardian specifically?
Sure. So we started Gas Free Seneca specifically to fight one fight, which was the gas storage proposal by now Crestwood. And we learned a lot along the way. Over the past 7 years, we've really learned a lot. We've been able to network with lots of other organizations and businesses and community members. And we felt like, the gas storage issue wasn't the only issue that threatened the lake. And so we also realized that eventually this gas storage issue is going to be resolved, hopefully very soon. And so we decided that what we needed to do was to start forming an organization that could then fight some of those other battles and work toward protecting Seneca Lake. And right now, quite frankly, there might be some other groups around that do some monitoring and reporting, but there was no other group that was really willing to stick their neck out, even if it means stepping on toes, to do what's right for the area and protect the lake. So we decided to start Seneca Lake Guardian to fight those efforts the way they really need to be fought. Mm-hmm. And we also learned from the LPG storage fight that you need to jump into these things early, or you end up with a 7-year battle on your hands. Mm-hmm. Sometimes if you jump in early enough, you can stop them before they become this long, drawn-out process that involves lawyers and costs lots of money. So that's why we started jumping in right away on this incinerator issue.
Now, you say, obviously, you've learned a lot. Things have probably changed for how you guys have sort of approached this. as the organizations have grown and as the support for you guys has grown. What have been some of the changes that you guys have actually seen just from the organizational side as you go through the process of fighting all of these really big, powerful corporate entities?
It's really interesting. When we first started Gas Free Seneca 7 years ago, we really couldn't get anybody's attention for the longest time. We really had to build up this organization to what it is today. Now, when we're faced with the incinerator fight, we're already connected and aligned, and so people are actually calling us who are quite influential and who are quite knowledgeable and plugged in, and offering their assistance to try and help us. 7 years ago, that wouldn't have happened.
Right.
So, and we've already got a business coalition that consists of nearly 500 businesses. I think that the business owners are more up in arms about the incinerator issue than they were about the gas storage issue. And trust me, they were pretty up in arms about that. So, we've already got a coalition of business owners who are, responsible for bringing in $2.8 billion into New York's economy on an annual basis and generating 59,000 jobs. So when you go to decision makers and talk about projects like this ill-conceived incinerator trash boondoggle, and you've got 500 local business owners on your side, they tend to listen a little more carefully.
Now, obviously, you guys do have a lot of support from the wine industry, essentially the tourism industry, of course, because they are the ones who would be greatest impacted by all of these different environmental threats. What do you guys, or how do you guys rebuke the idea that, this is just a bunch of angry liberals? This is not, because that, and it was, the reason why I ask is because it came up last night at the Seneca County Board of Supervisors meeting. One of the supervisors during a kind of offhanded debate session belted out something along those lines, and I thought to myself, that isn't what this is at all. But you guys must have to deal with that all the time.
I think the people that that we're opposing, they have a playbook almost, and they like to downplay the opposition or brand you as in the LPG storage fight, for instance. We were called the wine and brie crowd, as opposed to the beer and chips, I guess, or because we live on the east side of Seneca Lake, and so the town of Hector is really a little more progressive, and Ithaca is right over the hill,
Right.
So they would paint us as Ithaca liberals, Ithaca hippies, whatever, and of course that's not true. We have some of the largest wineries in the Finger Lakes region are on our coalition, and most of these business owners tend to be more conservative. They tend to be Republican. So this is not a left versus right, or a Democrat versus Republican issue. This is the Finger Lakes region has been building a brand for generations. Hazlitt 1852 vineyards. They started their family farm in the mid 1800s, and they've been building that, and now they are the largest, I think, employer, private employer in the wine industry. And the wineries depend on the pristine nature of the lakes, the pure air, the pure water, and of course the scenic beauty, and that's what. And then in addition to that, producing world-class wine, and now the Finger Lakes has become a world-class destination. I think there was over 1 million visitors went through the Watkins Glen State Park last year, and so they're vigorously opposed to this incinerator, as Yvonne said, for the reasons that some of these trash trains that are going to be coming through the region are going right past the tasting rooms of some of these wineries. There's a 260-foot smokestack that's going to be emitting It's going to be emitting stuff. As much as the company wants to say, oh no, we can scrub out all the nasty stuff. Well, that's not true. We know it's not true. Really, really nasty stuff like dioxin, one of the most toxic compounds known to man. And they say that this incinerator is going to be clean, green, renewable, sustainable, blah blah blah. And it's an absolute perversion of the buzzwords that define the environmental movement. And people need to know that that's not the case here.
So I guess I just want to jump in quick, and because I do want to get your opinion on one particular line that has come up a couple times. Alan Knopf, who represents Circular Energy, he has said repeatedly that every environmentalist should support this proposal, this incinerator proposal for Romulus. A lot of people, including some very conservative elected officials here in Seneca County, audibly laughed at that when it was mentioned last night. But as actual environmentalists, I'd like to get your takes on that kind of, I guess it's using a buzzword, but at the same time, it seems so disingenuous.
It is.
That's a kind way of saying it, Josh.
I try to be diplomatic here.
Yeah. No, there's nothing environmentally friendly about this proposal at all. It's, if you want to do a comparison between a landfill and a trash incinerator, take a pen, for example, that gets put into the landfill. It's made of plastic. It takes hundreds of years for it to decompose before the toxins can, seep into the water or the air. You put that same pen in an incinerator, and the toxins are immediately released into the air, or they're put into ash, which then can fly around and leak into your water and get into your air. Not to mention the fact that this thing is 3,200 feet away from the Romulus Central School District, where children are there every day of the week. This stuff they will be breathing in this stuff. It leads to more asthma attacks, which asthma attacks are one of the leading causes of absenteeism for schools. This is just an insane proposal. The dioxin and all the other contaminants that are released are also extremely bad for grapes. It'll also impact the taste of the grapes, which is very crucial for the winemakers.
Naturally.
So, when a company like this comes in and tries to paint people as liberals or environmental wackos, it's just an effort to discredit the facts that we have. Thankfully, Gas Free Seneca has gleaned a reputation of being credible because we are very careful about the facts we present. Most of the facts come from the industry itself, so they can't refute it, or they're documented and resourced in a way that's irrefutable. So we'll fight that same battle with this circular energy company, and I'm really hopeful that because we've gotten wind of this project, pun intended, because the wind is going to be blowing around and contaminating. It's a regional issue. I mean, depending where the wind goes, it's going to contaminate everyone. Another thing to recognize is that dioxin is often found in meat and dairy products. So farmers should be really concerned about this. This is a matter of protecting livelihoods. We're not just fly-by-night environmentalists. We're talking about jobs, the economy, protecting livelihoods, not to mention the health and the safety of the communities that are around this thing, or would be, if it happens, which it won't, because we're going to stop it.
Now, obviously, a couple times we've mentioned in grazing now, landfills. That has been, throughout the last couple of years, the big debate and sort of argument. It's what has become in Seneca County and Ontario County. Just sort of because you guys have stayed involved in that also. You haven't pulled yourselves out of that one. Your thoughts on where that stands right now, especially in Seneca Falls, where things have gotten really contentious with Seneca Meadows, obviously one of the largest landfills.
Yeah.
Just sort of where things stand right now. Do you see the light at the end of the tunnel? Because I know there are a lot of people, at least people who live in Seneca Falls, who feel like it's just a never-ending grind.
I hope that the town of Romulus takes a good hard look at what's happening up here in Seneca Falls and with Seneca Meadows, and that money that Seneca Meadows contributes to the local economy every year. But what I think, the way I look at Seneca Meadows is that the town fathers 20 years ago, and I graduated from New York Chiropractic College right down the road here, and I would drive by here, every day on my way to school and on my way home, and there was no landfill back in 1996 when I graduated from New York Chiropractic College. I believe there was a small privately owned landfill there. But I think that the town fathers in Seneca Falls that approved this project, Seneca Meadows, never envisioned what they were getting, and what the people that live here have to put up with on a daily basis. So I hope that the town of Romulus takes a good hard look at that. I'd like to believe that there's an end point with Seneca Meadows at some point, as far as it growing any larger, but you're always going to have that mountain of garbage. It's always going to be there. And we're aware of the fact that, the DEC mandates liners, right, to collect leachate. Liners, it's a man-made material. Is that going to last forever? Probably not. So when that liner fails, what happens to that toxic material? What do you do with it? This company wants to send, they wanted to send material to a wastewater treatment plant that actually discharges into an already impaired stream that flows into Seneca Lake. And Seneca Lake is under threat. It's probably the most threatened of all the Finger Lakes because of all these projects in Seneca Meadows and this incinerator and the gas storage. We've got 2 salt plants on the south end of the lake that are dumping chlorides into the lake on a daily basis, and it's already the saltiest of the Finger Lakes. I'd like to say that the people that are being impacted by Seneca Meadows, I think, have had enough, and they just want it to end. They want this nightmare to go away.
Now, of course, I'd like to sort of allow you guys the opportunity to give us an update on where things stand with the Crestwood LPG. Really strange set of circumstances. That's how I'll describe it. It's a really strange set of circumstances down there because they sold off part of their company, but they didn't sell off the part that was going to be responsible for storing LPG under Seneca Lake. Obviously, they haven't retracted themselves from that project in any way, shape, or form, or at least it doesn't seem like they have.
Right.
Where do things stand right now, and what are you guys sort of gearing up towards over the next several months as you continue this fight?
Yeah, when we heard the news that Crestwood had sold U.S. Salt, we were unbelievably elated, thinking that the fight was over. Unfortunately, as the day progressed, we learned that no, in fact, they are retaining their rights to store gas there and still trying to get permits approved to store 88.2 million gallons of highly explosive propane in unlined salt caverns right along the shore of Seneca Lake. The interesting part about all of this is this started out really as a 3-legged stool where they were going to store natural gas, propane, and butane. In the 7 years that we've had this fight, we have been successfully able to eliminate 2 legs of that stool. We've eliminated the natural gas storage, and we've eliminated the storage of butane. So the only thing that remains is the propane. And following an issues conference that we had back in February of 2015, we waited and waited and waited for the administrative law judge to make a determination in that case. He finally did, was it September? September of this year. And 2 days from now, tomorrow, Crestwood has an opportunity to respond to the appeal that we submitted to the judge. Now, our appeal was only because the judge determined that none of the issues that we raised were necessarily adjudicable. So in other words, we don't have to go through a costly, lengthy trial or a hearing to examine those issues. What he did do was he put all of those issues and all of our documentation and commentary into the record, the final environmental impact statement record. So that really kind of helps us out. It's all in there. We don't have to go through a costly trial. 2 days from now, Crestwood gets to respond, and what we've done is we've appealed to the DEC Commissioner Basil Sagos, saying, look, you've got all of our commentary and documentation in the record now. Supplement, what you already had with that information. You've got plenty to deny the permit for the project. And it will stand up in a court of law if you do, because you've got all this documentation that we've provided. We've spent the past 7 years knowing that that was where this was probably going to go. It was going to be up to DEC Commissioner Sagos, who answers to Governor Cuomo, to make the final decision. So all of our efforts to persuade Governor Cuomo to side with the families and the businesses of the Finger Lakes as opposed to a Texas gas company, we hope he's going to make that right decision. And we hope he makes it quite soon. We were hoping for a Christmas present this year, but it might be a New Year's present, if we're lucky.
So, actually, I'm glad you mentioned that, because the absence of regional and state elected officials from all of these sort of environmental issues, with exception of maybe the algae blooms and some of the more docile environmental issues, it isn't, but in terms of public perception, it is. What do you guys make of that, having been calling out to Governor Cuomo now for, what, years?
Yeah. It's funny because my first foray into anything like this was there was a project by Chesapeake Energy tried to turn an old depleted conventional gas well in the town of Pulteney on the shores of Keuka Lake into a deep injection well, and they wanted to bring basically fracking fluid from Pennsylvania to this well and inject it deep underground. And there was a lot of public outcry over that, but the elected officials on the state and federal level also weighed in on it and said, this is a bad idea. Don't do this. Let's not do this. We haven't had that in any of these fights over LPG storage, and I don't know why our state and federal officials, elected officials, are afraid to step in and say, this is actually, I think Senator Gillibrand and Senator Schumer have given us an indication that they think these are bad ideas. But then we have other elected officials that are not weighing in. Actually, Brian Kolb did write a letter to the DEC.
As did former Senator Nozzolio.
Senator Nozzolio wrote not one but two letters to the DEC commissioner. But then we have people like Tom Reed, who should be approached. Newly elected state senator is it Pam Helming?
Pam Helming, yeah, 54th district.
I'd like to hear what she thinks about this incinerator. It's in her district.
So I guess the closing question that I have for you guys is what is next? What's in the immediate future for you guys, fighting this, fighting all of these things, obviously making all these meetings and keeping the very busy schedule that you guys keep. Anything big on the radar that people should be paying attention to, or anything along those lines? Give us a heads up.
Yes, definitely. We have a forum planned for Sunday, January 7th at the Romulus Central School Auditorium. We've invited Dr. Paul Connett, who is an independent expert. We've heard from Circular Energy and their greenwashing of the project. Now we're going to hear from an independent expert. He doesn't make money off of this. He's just done a lot of research. He's traveled around the world. He knows about incineration and the issues with it, the dangers, the problems, and the alternatives to something like this. So he will be there, as will Judith Enck. Judith Enck is the former director or administrator of the Environmental Protection Agency in Region 2. She's an amazing human being. She's a very educated and well-informed person. She's coming and she's going to introduce Dr. Connett. And so we hope that not only the community, but also the elected officials in the town of Romulus and Seneca County will attend and get some, become informed.
And what was the location? Where is this going to be taking place?
It's at the Romulus Central School in right down in the heart of Romulus.
And you guys provided us with a graphic that we'll be tossing into the story that goes along with this, and it will also be in the description of the YouTube video, and we will make sure that everyone knows about this really informative event that's coming up.
Thanks.
It's incredible, the number of things that are happening, environmental issues that are coming up and just sort of out of nowhere, it seems. It's really, 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 it's an interesting time to be in the Finger Lakes.
A true environmentalist wouldn't be in favor of this project, because a true environmentalist wouldn't be in favor of thousands of trucks, diesel trucks, the diesel locomotives. Part of the environment is the noise. Noise is an environmental issue, and the noise from this project is going to be it. And 3,000 feet from a high school, not a high school, K through 12 school is. And the prevailing wind is west to east. They're downwind. Yeah. It's ridiculous.
Well, I really appreciate you guys coming on, and I'm sure we'll be having you back again to talk about all these things, because unfortunately I don't think all of them will be going anywhere anytime soon.
Thank you, Josh.
Thank you so much, Josh.
That's going to do it for us today. I'd like to thank Yvonne and Joseph, our listeners, and of course FingerLakes1.com for making this podcast possible. Inside the FLX airs Sundays at 7 p.m. on Spectrum Channel 12 and is available on iTunes, Stitcher, and the FingerLakes1.com app. Thanks for listening, and we will catch you next time.